Oh, hello, and welcome to Dente Rigamortis. I'm Review Cultist.
I'm Mikey. E stands for evil.
And I'm the gamer in yellow.
And we're here to discuss those internet stories, most creepy and most pasta, and be critically silly doing it. Tonight we have Dandelion.
How dandy.
So this one was, I think, another one that was suggested to us by my buddy, who gave us a long list of other ones. I'm not entirely sure why this one.
Perhaps he hit find a random creepypasta repeatedly.
I mean, so this one's by...
Joking aside, though.
Yeah. So Dandelion, it's on creepypasta.wikia. It's by Time Convergence. And I guess we'll just kind of go into this one. It's... the narrator is talking about how there's this plot of land in his super isolated neighborhood where nobody's bought it, and it just kind of sits there. And this old Vietnam vet, neighbor of his,
Buck,
told him the story about what used to be there, because there used to be a house there, and there used to be an old woman, or like, there used to be a woman there named Pam, or Mrs. Pam.
Mrs. Pam, as in that. I'm assuming that's last name.
Yeah, probably Mrs. Pam. That loved plants and flowers, and one day she discovered that like a dead animal in her backyard, like in her flower patch, and she didn't know how to get rid of it, so she just buried it in the garden, and she realized that it made the rotting body made the plants grow even better. So then she became morbidly obsessed with taking and killing all the stray cats and dogs in the neighborhood, and putting them into her yard to make the plants grow. And they became the plants grew so well and so vibrant that she eventually took the initiative and started up a flower shop, hiding the what she was actually doing with the whole trade secret kind of thing. People would ask her why her plants grow so well, and she's like, "Oh, that's trade secrets."
Oh, wink.
Yeah. Tommy was so double wink.
Yeah.
And so eventually she ran out of strays and whatnot. Oh, by the way, she was killing them by basically bringing them in and then feeding them poisoned dog food and cat food.
Yes.
But yeah, so eventually she ran out of strays, but she still had this morbid obsession with having her plants grow with carcasses of the dead. So she decided to take on a regular somebody's pet.
She didn't take it on. Essentially, a pet went missing. She found it
in her garden, and it was playing in her garden, and she did not like that at all, being a flower person.
Yeah.
And so she just beat the damn dog, the poor 5-month-old dog, to death. And then a friend of hers came over to have a chat and stuff like that, and smelled the awful smell of corpses.
There was a slight blood stain on the floor.
Yeah, and then she also what she was I'm chucking in the sink. She saw in the garbage the collar of the dog.
I think specifically it said carelessly put on top of the garbage lid.
Yeah,
it's just there.
Wow. Yeah. And then so she left and called the authorities, and after a brief investigation of the house and property, Miss Pam was incarcerated for 6 years. Roughly. No?
No one knew how long she spent behind bars.
Okay. But 6 years later, the house was eventually taken down, I think. The house was taken down regardless. Nobody
it was sold 6 years later.
Ah, okay, that's what it was. But
it was up for sale while she was in prison or whatever.
Gotcha.
And then eventually it was just leveled.
Yeah, and that just became vacant, and nobody bought the property at all. So after getting this story from Buck, on the way back home, our narrator decided to take a detour and go check out the place. And he went by it, and it was getting dark a little bit. But looked when he got out there, he freaked out, and the what he's found at the property will haunt him for the rest of his days. Dandelions. vibrant dandelions. Dun-dun. End of story.
Yes.
So, we'll go into everyone expects the Grammar Inquisitions at this point. There's this lone parcel of land in our practically isolated community which has remained vacant for a very long time, as Buck, Vietnam vet and elderly neighbor, has told me. Little run on because there's a lot of commas in there. Also, I feel like this could have been phrased better. Like,
Yeah,
I
me
actually
too.
rewrote it.
I did too. I want to see how different yours is.
In our very isolated community, there is a lone parcel of land, period. According to Buck, my elderly Vietnam vet of a neighbor, it has remained vacant for a very long time. Oh, done.
Yeah, yours is better than mine.
Well, I mean, what was...
Well, I didn't do as much editing. I just kind of moved a couple of sentences around. There's this lone parcel of land in our practically isolated community, comma, which has remained vacant for a very long time, period. A lot of homeowners were intrigued as to why no one was buying or leasing this lot, comma, let alone look at it, period. Real estate agents had long since discarded its markability. So I removed all the Buck stuff from the first part. It's just describing that.
Yeah.
And then the start of the next one is I'll have Buck tell this story from his perspective. He's my elderly neighbor and Vietnam vet.
Okay. So, yeah. My next thing is actually similar to that. Or is actually segues to that. Yeah, the whole, I'll have Buck tell the story from his perspective. I feel like Buck's part in the story, like basically the most of the bulk of the story, since it seems to be mentioned, like said in his words, should have that quote situation going. Because otherwise, because he even has kind of signifiers that it's dialogue, these inflections in words, or shortcuts in words and stuff like that only happen when you're talking.
It was his narrator, man. He said
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it's almost like this is like a script.
Yeah, it's like narrator man is telling someone.
Yeah. And that's my grammar inquisitions, honestly, for this story. So, Mikey, East End Survival.
Well, I have one. And it's a sentence that begins with so, and it's at the beginning of a paragraph.
Yeah, it's weird.
Okay.
Mind you, she wasn't overly weird or creepy, just plain infatuated with dandelions. So, one particular cold night, this starving cat strays into her backyard, and unable to get food or water, it dies.
So yeah, that would just work without the so.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That is odd. Gamer. You're up.
I figured, but I was waiting for him to be like, and that's all I got.
He said he only had one.
I know, but there's usually a transition thing that he does.
Yeah, we should do a transition thing because the story didn't have a good enough transition.
Yes.
So, onwards to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I will take the reins now. Thank you. I will open my quotation here. I have nothing. I don't really, but I have a second part of what I mentioned earlier.
Okay.
When it started listing the descriptors for Buck, it's where's the actual quote for that?
Vietnam vet and elderly neighbor? Or?
Yeah, which has remained vacant for a very long time, as Buck, Vietnam vet, and elderly neighbor had told me. When I first read that, I thought I was talking about three people.
Yeah, right?
One named Buck, one a Vietnam vet, and one an elderly neighbor.
Yeah.
Well, it could be, but it's all the same person. He's got multiple personality disorder.
As Buck, a Vietnam vet, and a elderly neighbor have told me.
But he's not actually elderly. It's just one of his personalities. He feels elderly.
Yeah.
I see. And he hasn't actually been to Vietnam. He's 20.
Yeah, exactly.
But he still has a persona that's a Vietnam vet. This character's really interesting.
Yeah.
And speaking of, I feel like Buck being... Buck has all these descriptors that are completely unnecessary.
The only reason I think the Vietnam thing is because this was set the story apparently takes the events of Miss Pam take place back in 30 years prior to the events of to the modern whenever this was written out.
Okay, but he could have been a farmer. and give the same story.
I guess so. Yeah, that works. Yeah, that would have worked too. Yeah. Yeah, it really is. It, like honestly, just Buck, my elderly neighbor.
Yeah.
There, like Vietnam vet was kind of odd. Unless like I'm also trying to figure out like is this actually set in America, or like is this set like somewhere else in the world? Because like dandelions in North America are perceived as a weed, and like but in other parts of the world, like in like Europe, people they find dandelions like we find poppies. Because poppies in like the Netherlands and like in Belgium and some of that, it's a weed.
Huh.
But
we
consider it like a beautiful looking plant, a beautiful looking flower, and a memorial thing. But over there, it's a weed to them, like the dandelion is to us.
Well, speak for yourself. It's yellow.
I mean, yeah, of course.
So I don't have a problem with it. My entire lawn is dandelions. It's nice. It's nice. But yes, that's about it.
All right. Then I guess on to actual thoughts. So, more than 30 years ago, the house was occupied by Miss Pam. Wait, so there's a house on this vacant parcel of land? And that's what's vacant? Like, that's what's vacant? And then I realized, no, it's fine that it's bulldozed. But, like, it just, like, and it starts off with, like, there was a parcel of land. It doesn't mention a house at all.
Yeah, it says it's vacant.
Yeah, and then after Buck starts like talking, it's like more than 30 years ago. Like there's a house that was occupied by Miss Pam.
Was
occupied by Miss Pam, as in like Miss Pam was the one that occupied it.
But
Not that
there
it was a house. No, the house. No. It says more than 30 years ago, the house was occupied by Miss Pam.
Then it's grammar inquisition.
Yeah, it should be grammar inquisition, I suppose. Hence why it's at the top of my actual things.
Nice.
But yeah, no, it's just like, wait, why is there, like, you need to mention that house, or you need to, like, I guess I just wanted maybe a little bit clarified, like, there used to be a house there.
Yes.
On the parcel of land, and it was owned by this Miss Pam.
Mm.
Yeah. And then my next one is, problem was she didn't have anywhere to bury the carcass, but in her own backyard. I mean, throwing it in a garbage bag and tossing it in with the trash is an option, right?
Is it? That seems like a dick move.
I mean, like, it just seems weird, like, that you'd, like, I'm not going to bury, like, a dead animal in my yard. Like, we've had, like, raccoons and, like, stuff like that in our ditch, like, dead, and we've just, like, thrown it into a garbage bag and, like, put it in with the dump. Or, like, compost.
This is just like a stray cat.
Yeah, but then like take it to take it to somewhere. Don't like bury it. It just seems really weird to me. Like that's your go-to would be to bury
like compost.
I guess.
That point.
Honestly,
Also,
it's not really weird. Like occasionally when birds like fly into your window and KO themselves, you generally like bury them in the garden or something.
I don't.
Well, no.
You just throw them in the garbage.
I throw them in our compost, like to go away, or I take them out to the woods and just drop them.
In my experience, when a bird KOs itself in the window, another bird comes by and eats it.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Well, that's nice. That's real nice.
But yeah, no. Also, this is set 30 years in the past, so like.
Sorry,
yeah.
it would just be funny if like. Bird KOs itself. Another bird comes in to get it, accidentally hits a window, KOs itself. A bigger bird comes in,
and then just the window eventually just gets broken.
Yes, indeed.
Nice.
And then there's just this massive bird that's feeding on all of them because everyone that's coming in is bigger and bigger.
Vulture, just like
yeah.
Nice. But yeah, no, I just thought it was kind of odd that like that was her go-to, was just to bury the stray cat that she has no relation to or no familiarity to in her own yard, like.
But it gave rationale as to why.
Oh no, it does. It's just I just mean like for some reason it was like logically to me that didn't seem like the right the first course of action to consider. But yeah,
I think
it's also set 30 years in the past, so like things were different back then. Like maybe. Yeah, sorry, you were gonna say something or?
Oh, I was just gonna say for me it went off the rails when she like buried a second one and like continued
a third one and a fourth one. Well, now she's like gotten like a weird morbid obsession. Now she's becoming the monster of the story. And then my next one, and talking about that, she resorted to taking in old stray animals for cultivation use, mysteriously evading watchful eyes when she would go out to collect. No one ever caught her in the act, Back home, she would feed the homeless animals treated meals, a lethal concoction of bug spray, roach bait, and mice killer, mixed with dog and cat food. I hate this woman. I hate this woman completely.
Yeah, she's kind of the worst.
And then update. She is the absolute worst. God,
Yeah.
like good human monster, but man, my heartstrings. Especially near the end of the story, like there's a 5-month-old puppy.
Yeah.
Like, and yeah. Followed by my next quote. After a short investigation on her lot, Mrs. Pam was incarcerated for mistreating and killing animals. No one knew how long she spent behind bars. All they knew was that a little bit more than 6 years later, her house and lot, all of it, was subsequently sold to people who would later discover the carcasses and have the entire house demolished.
Before I continue, does that mean 6 years later she got out of prison and then sold her house and left?
No, it probably means that like while she was incarcerated, and then when she was released or something like that, she never went back to the house, and the house basically got auctioned.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That she probably got off in 6 years.
Or it would actually be less, according to, because I actually Googled it, animal cruelty will get you anywhere between 3 months and 3 years max in prison.
Really?
Yeah.
Even that level?
Yeah. The only way that you'd get more is if you were killing service animals, like police dogs and like those kind of things. That'll get you anywhere between 20 years and 40 years.
Yeah,
Jeez.
and honestly, because they probably only found potential proof of one.
Yeah, and like one that
Because they
a lot of
didn't.
them have broken down.
Yeah, well, they didn't find the carcasses until 6 years later.
it wasn't until like 6 years later when the new homeowners found it.
Yeah, so the most she might have gotten was a fine and was never actually incarcerated.
Yeah, my guess is that she was, or the house was probably sold at auction, like by the city or by the municipality.
Like because she's in jail, so she can't pay
For like mortgage or rate or whatever like that.
Yeah, continue with your thoughts. Sorry.
But yeah, no, and then as an aside, I think this it could have made the story more interesting in a creepy way if there had been some kind of inkling or hint in Buck's story that like maybe she never actually made it to prison. Like that was just kind of the cover-up story that the community talked about or like mentioned, and the community actually took care of her and hid her in the ground as a sort of karmic justice.
One of
More on that though in a second.
Sorry for the greater good. That's the reference I was going for.
The greater good.
Greater good.
So this is like the last line in the story. My breathing stopped, and every sound I heard was narrowed down to mere white noise. I saw what gave me an utterly sleepless night. In the small plot of dirt where the grass softly bowed were small, pristine dandelions. Okay, like would have been better if they had formed some kind of like the shape of a body, or given some morbid indication that Pam's body, or like a human body, or some kind of body was actually buried beneath. Maybe give further insinuation of the murder plot I mentioned earlier, like by the neighbors. Rightfully so. Fuck Pam. Granted, perhaps it's supposed to suggest that the dandelions are growing pristine and nice anew, because there's an animal body down there, and Pam is still out there 30 years later. But wow. I only got that kind of insinuation like after reviewing the end of the story in prep for this discussion. Mm-hmm. I didn't. My first time around, I was like, okay, dandelions, ooh, like the character already knows that the dandelions were being grown there, and know that there were bodies underneath the ground, like that were feeding the dandelions. Why is he so utterly terrified to find dandelions on the property?
Let me tell you why. Let's say you do a bunch of research on a clown.
Yeah.
Okay. And this clown's a normal clown, and he had an ice cream truck or whatever. He sold ice cream. And then one day he put machine guns on it and became Sweet Tooth and started murdering people.
Okay.
Then you go to his house, and you find the house is basically empty, but you see a clown nose sitting on the table.
Yeah.
You're in the house of a murderer that has killed multiple people, and you see a clown nose.
I would say it would be a little bit creepier if it was like clown guy, a little bit more down to earth, like more realistic.
You put guns on a car.
Clown guy, like happy, like clown of the children, and has like a special like ice cream truck kind of thing. And then you find out he's Wayne Gacy, the guy who had a double life. His public life was a clown, like a performer for like kids' birthday parties and stuff like that. And then his secret life was a serial killer where he lured and killed young men and boys to his house and killed them in sexual torture, and then buried them in his basement.
Okay.
So then you go to his house, like years later, you go to like the house, or go to the house that's supposedly like Wayne Gacy's house, and yeah, then there's like a red nose there. It's like
See, it's something that's not scary by itself, but when that thing has meaning, then it's scary.
I guess in that situation, yeah. It's just like as a reader, I was like, ooh, Dandelion.
Yeah.
I think you're just being a little Nancy on it because you hate it so much.
Well, the problem is that dandelions grow everywhere. So the fact that they're there doesn't really mean anything.
Now, unless again we find out that this isn't from like North America, where dandelions are the most common pest or weed pest. Like if it's somewhere where dandelions don't grow that often and are used as like kind of like as a plant that like somebody had to plant down, yeah, for sure that would have more meaning.
Well, but I'll say this: the place is no one lives there. No one's taking care of the place, and there is a very small collection of dandelions there. It's not like the entire thing is overgrown with dandelions, which is what would happen here if.
Well, and that's part of the problem too. An unkept lot with dandelions, they're going to spread themselves.
Yeah, they have that, like when they get like a certain time of year, like they turn into those the white fluffy ball things and flutter off. Like basically that's how they like spread. So I'm surprised that entire lawn is not just all dandelions.
Almost like Pam is still there cultivating.
See, and that would be great if that was like given a little bit more insinuation or a little bit more hint into the story.
Honestly, that was my first assumption when I read the story.
I didn't get that at all. But okay, yeah, until my second or third review of that part. But yeah, my first one was like, okay,
yeah.
But yeah, that's honestly my last actual thought before final thoughts. I just I felt like the story needed a little bit more punch by the end. But
Specifically, punch in Pam's face.
yes,
Even if it's a bowl of punch.
yeah.
As long as it's followed by a punch through the glass. Okay, cool. That's a double punch. Punch.
Alright.
Liquid punch followed by a solid punch.
Yes.
Alright, so you...
Then we'll need a gaseous punch as
Okay,
well.
so
Sorry. Then a plasma punch.
Alright, so you covered most of my thoughts here, although the one... I'll just reiterate the one comment here. All they knew was that a little bit more than 6 years later, her house and lot, all of it, was subsequently sold to the people who would later discover the carcasses and have the entire house demolished. 6 years for carcasses?
you might find bones,
Yeah.
but that's not carcasses.
No.
Then again, what is the definition of a carcass? Does it include just like a skeleton as well?
I didn't look that up.
Google foo.
But
I'm pretty sure that a carcass is like the whole
so
body,
I-
flesh, and
I get what you're saying. I'm just curious to see if there is actually like a broader definition than what we.
I unfortunately have a counterpoint. 2 counterpoints. This is Buck's dialogue.
they were floating in formaldehyde.
Okay, sorry.
No.
Guys, carcass, the dead body of an animal. Synonyms are corpse, cadaver, dead body, remains, skeleton, relics.
Oh, skeleton, nice.
So, yeah, a carcass can be just like kind of a skeleton.
Also, my 2 counterpoints are it's Buck's dialogue, so it's all dialogue, and it's the way the character talks.
The way the character
If he wants to refer to his bones as carcasses and he knows that it's legit, like we just found out, then fine.
Also, skeleton technically is the synonym to carcass, but it's still it's still there.
Well,
Yeah. But when I think carcass, I think
I get you.
flesh, bone.
Yes.
I think of flesh, some flesh on a bone,
Yeah, at least.
Yeah.
But they've been in the ground, eaten by worms.
and by the roots of the plants too, because
Yeah.
they're nutrients. Yeah, I'm surprised that I'm surprised they didn't just find skeletons of animals. Yeah. That said, how many animals Miss Pam was putting in there? I'm surprised they're that would be actually rather terrifying if you're just doing your working in this new garden of yours and you just find animal skulls and bone work. It's like, oh god, that would be terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Just another comment. I'm surprised there's no mention of a Chinese food spot going out of business.
Wow.
Oh, jeez.
Wow. Jesus Christ. The thoughts and opinions of certain members of Aldente Rigamortis do not reflect the show as a whole.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
You went there.
Yeah, you went with the stereotype.
Yep. Good job, you did it. Maybe after she got away from the cops, she started a new life running a restaurant.
Yeah.
That's what she does.
Maybe.
Yep. Moving right along.
Yeah.
Spin it more.
Easier way to hide the carcasses.
I suppose, yes.
Maybe.
Well, you have a kitchen that you have to keep clean, so you have industrial solvents.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Move right along.
Yeah. Onward to Gamer, yeah.
Okay.
What do I have? So my first note is when Buck is starting to mention all the things that are happened happened. Mentioning all the things that happened. I was going to say
I'm just going to take your grammar inquisitor license away.
Slip of the tongue.
It's how the character talks.
Yeah.
Clearly.
So you fucked up earlier and I completed your fuck up.
It's fine.
You didn't even notice. Anyway, when Buck is recalling all of the things that happened in the past, when it got to the point where with the dog that she's doing the bad things to,
Yeah.
at this point, I was like, how does Buck know in great detail what specifically happened behind closed doors?
That's right. I mean, aside from
he didn't live with her.
Aside from again, maybe it came out of the investigation they had, but at the same time, the investigation, and then again, 6 years later, they did find all the bones, so maybe the community started kind of putting two and two together. But yeah, that's also awfully specific how she did all that,
and he knows that Mrs. Pam, her friend, came over. Mentioned how the smell was bad, was vomiting, and saw the color on the garbage.
Yeah.
He knows everything in specific detail.
Even if she got she mentioned even if when the cops showed up and found some of the bodies and stuff like that, she might have only recounted how she killed the first dog or not the first dog, the pet.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but would she have mentioned because they found 6 years later they found the other bodies and then demolished the house. Would she, using that information, did she actually say anything about how she killed the other dogs and cats?
And even if she didn't, even if
I think we have a wider conspiracy here.
Even if the cops found out specific things, how would Buck know? He's not police.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have the information.
Unless Buck is assailant.
No, Buck is Mr. Pam.
Oh, Buck is
Buck, really? How dare you speak incorrectly?
Buck is actually Pam. Is Buck Pam?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you just said. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for showing up.
No problem.
I mean, yeah, we have descriptors for everything about Buck except for his last name.
Yeah,
a little fishy.
Yeah, a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he does. Yeah, maybe nobody really knows his real name or his. Okay, also kind of, I don't mean to be stereotyping.
Stereotyping?
Yes. So Miss Pam, what if she so Buck is from Vietnam or no, sorry.
I love how you give me shit on one slip up.
I'm just joking. All right, fuck off. Okay, so Mr. Buck. So Buck was a Vietnam vet.
He still is.
It's mentioned in the story for some reason. What if that is a hint that Buck was, when he was overseas, like he brought Mrs. Pam over because Mrs. Pam was actually from Vietnam, and so
what does that have to do with her murdering animals?
That's the connection between like Buck and Mrs. Pam is that they are actually in cahoots because Buck brought Mrs. Pam to America, and then. I'm just saying, like, adding on to the conspiracy that, like, how, like, the connection between Buck and Mrs. Pam is that because Buck was a Vietnam vet and Mrs. Pam, like, the last name Pam is could pass as, like, a Vietnamese last name. What if, like, that's why, like, that's the connection there, is that he brought her over and blah.
And blah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Pulling strings there.
Yeah. The dark conspiracy.
If it said that, then
said,
whatever. But because it is it goes nowhere that he's a Vietnam vet.
Yeah. Honestly, again, like aside from like maybe the author initially intended to have something like come up, but then never like forgot about it or something. Mm-hmm. Like it really doesn't really. It adds a little bit more like color to the character.
Yeah, but how far do you want to go? Like, I'll let Buck continue the story. Buck is my elderly Vietnam vet neighbor. His favorite color is blue. He likes long walks on the beach.
He loves chop suey.
Oh, yeah, totally loves chop suey, yeah.
The song from System of a Down.
Of course,
that's also not the meal.
Well, he also loves the meal as well. He likes eating the meal while listening to chop suey.
Of course, yes.
Yeah. And singing it while eating it. It's a fucking mess, but he loves it.
Yeah.
That's a really long descriptor.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, right. I'm still me, I think. But yeah. Long story short, I don't get how he knows all that information.
Yeah, unless he was in cahoots, or like again, like the author might have, or the story needs to have a little bit more like reason for why he would have known, or because like the story says like. She went away for 6 years, or like vanished after, like she's been gone for 6 years, and then the house was bought. And
yeah, it's weird that he knows so much specific detail, and then he doesn't know anything about that specifically.
Yeah,
like he almost has the knowledge of a narrator who would just know everything because he's a narrator and he's just telling the story.
He's the sage. Elderly Vietnamese. Or no,
he's not Vietnamese.
No, I'm sorry, I messed it up. I'll just give you my fucking badge.
Alright, fine, good.
I'm a loose cannon. Walk away. But yeah, no, he's the elderly, he's the sagely elderly Vietnam vet.
Yes.
So he knows all the things.
I mean, it's entirely possible. You could also be right. He could be a Vietnam vet, as in he was fighting for Vietnam, but by now he's living in X country, whatever country it is.
Buck's actually just his nickname.
Yeah, because he loves hunting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, writing a lot of lore.
Yeah.
But yeah, my only other note is in regards to the ending. My first question that came up was: is it implying that she's either still planting or just that the dandelions were so strong that they're just resilient?
They're just still there, yeah.
And also, wouldn't the grass be longer than ankle length?
Yeah,
it was been sitting there for like
unless it's being,
6 years unattained, or not unattained.
It's being maintained by it's like again further evidence that like why Mrs. Pam is still around.
Well, or if there's a for sale sign, then they would mow it down.
A rotting for sale sign though, so like it's. But yeah, I guess even a rotting for sale sign is still a for sale sign. So like there still would be
someone would come by
every couple of months, every 2 months that somebody comes by and checks it. Or
would they fix up the sign though? Do you really think it's going to sell it if it's like decaying?
Mm-hmm. Well, and there's also potentially grass bylaws.
Oh,
so you have to keep grass a certain length.
Yeah, don't want ticks and stuff like that getting on your community pets.
Mm-hmm. I suppose yes. All right, I'll let that slide. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's weird that like the the ground there is all like goopy and
Yeah,
weird.
there again, like this, the ending doesn't give us enough. I feel like it gives us it gives us stuff there that could be used for something spooky, but then just ends off on it was dandelions. Like,
Yeah.
I need more.
Yeah, we need more of a connection.
Yeah,
I suppose. But yeah, back to the ground being damp, like I just said. Wouldn't that make it so like people wouldn't have been like mowing it because you'd be like
yeah,
while mowing over it, like if it's all goopy.
Well, it might
Yeah.
have just rained recently.
yeah, like yeah, exactly. It could have just been like a rainy day.
Or just the ground is filled with bodies,
Just-
like human bodies at this point. As
yeah,
well.
exactly. Yeah. Or adding to the Buck Pam conspiracy, Buck, whose nickname is Buck and not actually his real name, because he likes hunting. Mm-hmm. He hunts deer and other like hunting animal and other like hunting prey, and gives them to Pam, who sneaks into her old property and buries the body. So she's been like burying deer carcasses.
So she could keep doing that without actually killing people's like pets or.
Yeah.
So he's really our hero.
Yeah, but he's the hero
Yeah.
that we needed, not the one that we wanted.
Yes, indeed. Yes, because otherwise she would be killing pets and potentially killing people.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well,
There's a lot more interesting. There are a lot. I feel like it's a little bit more goofy and but better than my whole fact that basically the community said that she went to jail, but they actually all just like ganged up on her and killed her and then buried her in the body on the property.
Yeah, it's so open ended that it doesn't leave an impact. It's kind of getting into final thoughts, but yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, she could still be out there killing strays.
possibly
And
move to a
then-
different town.
And then, like you said, if you have Buck giving other animal carcasses, then that stops her from needing to just take out people's pets. It's only strays that she goes after.
Thanks, I just said that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty sure I just said that.
Sure?
Pretty sure.
100%?
80%.
I'm like 90% sure I just said that.
I guess only the recorder. Oh, future me is the only one that can. And our audience will be the only ones that will be able to remember or tell.
We're great with our words. On to final thoughts, please.
Okay,
End this pain.
like that poor 5-month-old dog.
Yeah.
We keep bringing it up.
Because I'm really sad.
Oh, I know, but
Anyway.
yeah.
So the story reminded me of a freaky story style narrative, or like the happened to a friend of mine kind of tale. It definitely made me hate the creepy obsessed character / human monster of the story. So props to that, I guess. Though even that, like, I am kind of biased. That's a biased subject or a biased opinion because I am an animal person, and so animal death is generally a good way to skeeve me out. In a creepy story, it was all right throughout with the semi-visceral true life horror until the end reveal, which we've gone on of dandelions, like, oh no kind of thing, and like
You're the only one who wasn't
I'm sorry,
impacted
like,
by
it just-
it. Or were you, Mikey? Actually, you haven't made a comment on that.
Yeah, how was that? How was it to you?
Yeah, it didn't hit me.
All right, fine, continue.
Well,
I guess I am the weird one.
because
like-
dandelions are everywhere.
Yeah, like they alone won't signify
They're
anything.
not there in the story.
Yeah. Anyway, like
this is-
they alone won't, like, dandelions alone won't signify anything creepy that the character didn't already know from the story they were just told by Buck, and then they went to the place expecting what? Like, did you not expect to see dandelions on a property that had dandelions prior? And like, yeah, there's a creepy connotation there that like they are vibrant and like lush and stuff like that because there's bodies on the ground, but you knew that already. Like, I'm sorry, like, if I was going to a place that I knew a serial killer had butchered some people and, like, planted some type of plant there, or some kind of flower there, I would not be, like, terrified when I found the plant there. Or, like, the flower still growing.
You agreed with my clown
I
situation.
to a point, but, like, at the same time, like, if I'm going to Wayne Gacy's, like, supposedly the house of Wayne Gacy's, I know that, and I find a red nose there. It's not entirely unexpected.
I know, but that doesn't mean it's not scary.
It's creepy, but I don't think it's going to like like
He didn't say he shat his pants as he ran away.
my breathing stopped, and suddenly, and every sound I had, and every sound I heard was narrowed down to a mere white noise. I saw what gave me an utterly sleepless night. Dandelions.
Or he's actually suffering a stroke or something.
Oh God.
Probably not.
Yeah, no.
Just deer in the headlights.
Yeah, it's just like looking down, like I don't know. It just seems like I don't know, like again, like different. I get like I might just have a different like kind of reaction to that than a normal person because I am kind of weird. But
I don't know.
yeah, it just I don't know.
You seem to agree with me on one aspect, but then on this specific aspect, no.
Yeah.
So I'm confused. But either way.
Yeah. As such, I really don't feel I could fully recommend this one. It's on the low end of, at best, as written with like maybe like as it is written, like it's on the low end of like a partial recommendation, like maybe 30%. There's a good creepy base here for people being awful to innocent animals and stuff like that, but the end revelation didn't really do it for me, and it had a bit of a rough start, like with some of the because a lot of our grammar position stuff was at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And personally, I feel Miss Pam got off easy, just vanishing from the story at a point. Mm-hmm. Like she got out of prison sometime, and then 6 years later, like her house was sold and stuff like that, and that's it. Like, unless the ending is about her still being around after 30 years, and that's the significance at the end. But again, I didn't see that until like after I started rereading the story for like my analysis of it. And I think it would have, and if they'd added that, it would have been more impactful if they'd actually like mentioned more stuff about that, or if they'd given more hint to that.
It's implied.
I don't know. Then it's too subtle. Even for me, it was too subtle.
I see it like a murderer returning to the scene of the crime situation.
Yeah, and
because if it's not mentioned that there's dandelions everywhere, but there is some at that specific point, then that means they don't naturally grow there. So them being there means they were planted.
Yeah, and I'm reminded of an ending for a movie. I think it was a South Korean movie about a murderer like that was killing girls and stuff at this certain or leaving the bodies at this certain spot, and these detectives spent a year trying to solve it, and they never actually ended up solving the murders, and it ruined them for 20 years to the point where they left the cop business, the detective business, and like became other things. And then like the ending is that it cuts to 20 years later, and you know what, future me, just put a spoiler, this is spoilers for the film is Memories of Murder, a 2003 South Korean crime drama. Cool, thanks. Skip ahead to 44 minutes and 44 seconds. And then, so at the end of the movie, the guy is like a courier now. He's a delivery guy. And he happens to be passing by the sewer drain pipe that the kills were like 20 years prior. And he sees this little girl like looking in the tunnel and stuff like that. And so he goes down and like goes to check up on her and says, "Hey, you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I was just looking at something." It's like, "Why are you looking down here?" It's like, "Oh, some old guy like came by and I like was down here earlier, and he like was just saying like he thought he remembered something about this place that was really significant to him like a long time ago." And the guy was like, "Wait, what do you look like? What was he?" He's like, "Oh, I don't know. I just didn't know." And that's the end of the movie. Like, that's the dread, is that the killer was still alive, and and the detective who couldn't find him like 20 years prior still couldn't find him. That was the dread of the end of the story, was that, or the end of the movie, was that the killer's still out there and went back to the scene of the crime, but the detective was also there and missed him by a couple of hours.
Yeah.
As like, like it's just like that tragic dark, like that would have been. If that had been more, if the story had that more of that would have been, I think, really like interesting. But I'm sorry, just there's not enough here at the end for me to like it. So, also, I would have also liked. I think it would have been more also interesting if the karmic death of Pam or Mrs. Pam like if the community had actually like secretly killed her and buried her in her own garden.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's my final thoughts. Like I really can't recommend it. Like low end partial recommend it the most.
So, talking about returning to the scene of the crime, what if Narrator Man is Miss Pam?
Okay.
And she's just lost the memory of what she did in the past, and she's befriended Buck, who is also old and elderly at this point in the story.
Uh-huh. Well, no, that's one personality of him. Just acts that way.
So, basically, when she gets to the lot and sees the dandelions, it triggers something, which is why the whole tunnel vision.
Oh yeah, maybe.
Then all of her memories came flooding back.
Mm-hmm.
And she starts looking for animals now.
She buys the property again and starts it anew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Actually, that wouldn't be too. I actually, if there was more to the story, and that's again, it suffers from like short story syndrome, where like because it's so short, it doesn't give us a lot of details to really grasp at.
Mm-hmm.
But it leaves it mysterious, and you like mysteriousness.
I do, but like
you
this
hate
one,
animal death, so that means you hate this whole thing.
No. Okay, as it like separating myself from my empathic my empathy for animals.
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Pam is a great horror character type because she is a obsessive human monster who has no regard for animal life for animals because she loves her little flowers.
Mm-hmm.
So she's a creepy, obsessed human monster in that regard. But yeah, it's just I didn't hate it for her like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just didn't like the ending. It didn't grab me like it apparently grabbed you.
I haven't even said if it grabbed me or not.
You said it earlier. Like he's like
I said I got the ending.
Okay.
Not that I'm like, oh my god, I'm so scared.
Yeah. Okay. Fair.
I just understood it.
Yeah. I guess it took me longer to understand it.
Well, we know. We've gone over it.
Yeah. All right. That's it.
Alright. For me, my issue is that for a real-world horror, it left out real-world information.
Okay.
Like what?
Like the quote, "No one knew how long she spent behind bars."
Would it have been in the paper?
Well, it'd be in the paper. You could look up the local laws and find out how long she would have been potentially behind bars based on the basic laws.
Yeah.
Like
we were going on. It was a quick Google. Like literally, just penalty for cruelty to animals because that's animal death and
We also
torture and stuff
don't
like that.
know what year this story takes
Yeah,
place.
it is 30 years in the past, so the rules, the laws may have changed.
Yeah.
And also we don't know when. I'm sorry, 30 years in the past from when this was written. So I did not check when this story was actually posted online, but
yeah,
you can make the assumption that that's when the story started.
yeah, but
Well, that's when the events happened.
Yeah.
But regardless, the story being written in 2008 or whatever, for example, that doesn't mean that 30 years prior, that's when it happened specifically. Because the actual the telling of the story could have happened in the 80s. And then 30 years from that...
Okay, that's a large leap of faith, large leap to do that then. Because I take it at face value at that point, where it's whatever you're reading, whenever the story was written is when the modern was, the here and now is.
Yeah.
Unless said in the story otherwise.
yeah.
But it could have been on an old forum somewhere, and then once creepypasta became had creepypasta.wikia or whatever, it got transposed over there. But if it was written 10 years prior,
Counterpoint, creepypasta.wiki recently has been removing stories that don't have credits to them or have proper credit. They don't have they weren't made by if they've actually been removing stories that aren't either credited or posted by the original creator.
okay. But regardless, I'm just putting this out as a random.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that this is how it actually worked, but theoretically, someone in the past could have written a creepy story and posted it on an old forum or something.
Yeah.
And then once creepypasta.wiki became a thing and they found out about it, they took their story and put it on that even though it was written years prior.
Okay, well, in that case, then that makes all of, like, our assumptions about this then null and void, because, like, then you either just have to take it as a reader, like, as you're reading it, that's the one the here and now is, and it's 30 years. Because unless it's said otherwise, like, that's how you figure out what the timeline is.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Anyway, as to the actual laws, typically for animal cruelty, they get worse as time progresses. So what we have now is probably worse than what it would have been 30 years ago.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So, like I said, it might have just been a slap on the wrist.
And she was just incarcerated for, like, a couple, like...
No, he's saying not even.
Yeah.
Okay, fair.
Like,
yeah.
just a small fine or something.
Don't
like,
do it again.
Yeah.
Don't kill people's pets.
He walks off. Starts up a new place, new business in another town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every town has a dandelion patch. Yeah.
So the fact that it's missing that key information and saying no one knew when clearly someone must know
Yeah.
is
Well, obviously someone must know she
Okay,
knows.
Yeah.
Well, and obviously,
Generalization.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
to say that, like, yeah, like, weird. An old man is, like, who's telling the story, does a generalized thing because he doesn't know. Like, no one knew. Like, the community didn't know. No one in the community knew. That's what he's
well.
probably
If it said no one in the community knew, that would be fine.
Okay.
Well,
I think that's a little too, like, semantics.
his problem is
but-
the same as mine, it seems. Where he knows all the specific information, but there's this random stuff that he doesn't know that he should know because he is so clairvoyant about all the other stuff.
Or was so involved in the investigation.
Yeah, I
It
don't
turns out Buck was actually one of the investigators.
Yeah.
Or was that friend? Like, why wasn't he the friend?
Because this... that would make more sense.
Yeah.
But the problem is the story says she had a friend come over.
Yeah.
So it's Buck saying that he knew that she had someone come over.
Yeah.
So,
So, like, basically what it sounds like is Buck needed to be more ingrained in the plot.
Buck's unnecessary.
Yeah, it really is. Like, he really...
Narrator could just tell the whole story.
Could have just been, like, telling us it's a story that he heard from, like, the community. Like, not even, like, just from Buck, but, like, just... He's been doing some digging about the story, about this whole event.
Honestly, alright, you keep talking.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to go into final thoughts if you don't.
So for me, the creepiness factor sort of failed. Yes, it's cruelty to animals and not the greatest, but happened 30 years ago.
Yeah, no, I'm like, and honestly, again, like, I'm a little bit more empathic when it comes to animals.
Yeah.
So, like, I read that and I was like, I fucking hate her.
Well,
She
we all
dies.
do. Everyone does.
Yeah, so it's a non-recommendation.
Yeah, okay.
Fair. For me, what was I talking about previously?
How Buck is unnecessary.
Yes. Oh,
Yes.
right. Yeah, thank you. So, Buck is unnecessary. Moving on. No, well, like, the entire story could have been told just through, not a narrative, but a narrator.
Yeah, like
Just, not a person, just someone is saying what happened in this area.
yeah, basically the omniscient voice.
Yes.
That would have worked much better.
Because all these specific details would be, it would make sense that they're there. Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't be like, they wouldn't be like, no one knows this. It would be, she went to jail for this, or she disappeared strangely from jail before her time, like she broke out. Like, there's a lot of ways it could go with a narrator who would know everything. Instead of a person who is narrating something that knows almost everything, except when it's convenient to not know things.
Yeah. When they didn't do a Google search on the time
Yeah.
when somebody... Yeah,
He's also elderly, so you might not know how to use a computer.
sure. Okay, going... Like, I meant the author, not the not the character in the
Oh,
story.
I meant the character. Yes. Yeah, the scene with the poor puppy is not very nice.
Yeah.
I want to say that it could have been done more tastefully, but I don't know how you would do it tastefully.
No.
But essentially, just not
Either-
as graphically described.
Okay, I did not like it, but it did not actually turn me off from the story. Mm-hmm. Because it just showed how much of a monster she was, which is fine. I'm fine with that. Mm-hmm. I think if you're going to do that, like, it's probably... Honestly, it wasn't as bad as it could have been. But it still delivered the shock value. that are needed.
Yeah.
So I think it honestly is fine. As somebody who loves animals and hates when they suffer in movies and in real life, I think that it was done as best it could have been for the shock value that it was trying to elicit.
Like, it's still graphic, but it's not going
Like, it's
way
not-
too far with
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Like the dog got like beaten up a couple, like got smashed a couple of times. It ran around the house in blood, like all bloody and stuff like that, and then she brained it. So like that's not too. It's graphic, but it's not too graphic.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
No.
As somebody who loves dogs and puppies, I felt really bad. I felt really sad.
It does suck that she doesn't really get her comeuppance for all of it.
That's
That's
what
what really sucks.
Like the ending, like that's what left me like again. If you were gonna go with the boogeyman ending where like she's still out there kind of thing, she's still doing this kind of stuff, make that more apparent, or have her comeuppance and have her be her karmic end. Like
And the other thing is, why did she do that to the puppy when everything else was basically killed with poison?
because she freaked out. Like she saw that it was like rolling.
It was
around in the
literally
garden, and she
eating
just,
her flowers. She was angry at it.
she just started like lashing out at it. Like it was the one time when she like basically like didn't have a plan. She just went after it because she was enraged by it being attacking her plants.
But it was the easiest thing. It's
She
just in
went
her
with her
backyard.
rage.
It's like, oh, there's one right there.
It's a psychopath.
Yeah, she's a psychopath. So she had a lapse in judgment, and like she lost her cool basically because it was affecting her flowers, her precious little flowers.
Technically, if she didn't lose her cool,
She could have gotten away with it.
yeah.
Legit, yeah.
The reason that she got caught was because she lost her cool and there was like blood in the collar that she left on top of the garbage
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And she invited someone to come over while
Well, after the fact.
Yeah.
Like, recently after the fact.
It might have been that they were already invited.
Oh, shit, yeah. And then she lost her cool again, yeah.
possibly. But yeah. And when we got to the ending, I got it that, okay, it symbolizes that this is where a whole bunch of animals were murdered.
Yeah.
And that is creepy, even though it's a non-creepy thing. I got that. It didn't make me scared. I don't think it's a perfectly executed ending. There's a lot of other ways you could take it. It could be essentially, like we've said, she's either dead or still out there. Or like one way that you could say that she's still out there is narrative being like, after he sees the flower, he goes back and just sits down to think. He turns on the TV, and on the TV, the news says in like a neighboring county, there's a disappear. Like the strays are like
A string of disappearances of animals and stuff.
no, just like the stray population is decreasing in this town for unknown reasons.
And everybody's happy.
Yeah. Okay, like again, another thing like to bring up about the ending, like, yeah, when me rereading it, the one thing that changed was I realized that it said pristine dandelions. There go like, okay, it's like because there's still a corpse down there growing, like feeding these plants. But when I first read it, I didn't really notice that, or didn't really like see that, or kept the connection on that.
Yeah.
So it was just like, again, I just feel like there need to be a few more like descriptors in that last line of saying like just tell us like it's like make it like more like maybe they're larger than normal like dandelions, or they're more like there's like a nice like neat patch of them that
Like a freshly
cultivated.
dug patch.
Exactly. Yeah. Like just having like dandelions there just growing pristinely. Like, okay, I see that like in
Okay, I'm sick of repeating this. I'm going to repeat it one last time.
Okay, go.
Here, in a wild field, they will grow. But because it is specifically saying that Narrative walked through this field where there was nothing, but in this one area there's dandelions, they are not native to the region. So they were planted.
Yeah.
So they don't naturally grow.
Then it has to say that. Like
It's implied.
okay, I didn't get the implication.
That's fine.
Is the problem? Yeah, and again, it's one of those weird things where we are polar opposites, and I'm on your side, like on the side that you would usually be, and you're on the side that I would usually be on.
And you're also
Where,
you're also on my side in regards to like the clown situation.
Yeah, okay,
But
no,
when
like-
I draw the parallels to this, you're like no because reasons.
because it's pre-written notes.
Yeah, that's why.
But no, I get you, and I also like that would also be kind of a creepy thing, like because again, it insinuates that like. Well, the other thing is, like I said about I did say the clown nose like would freak me out if I saw that, like at like say not just Wayne Gacy's, but like anybody, like any that kind of person, or Sweet Tooth's old house.
Can I give you another example?
Sure.
It balloons. balloons are not scary, but when they're in it, there's the implication that it's because of the it clown.
Yeah.
So it's something not scary being scary because of the reasoning behind
Yeah, because there's something behind the balloon. Yeah, like there's...
And the thing behind the pristine dandelions is the fact that a murderer has killed repeated animals, and there's potentially one buried there right now.
I get that. I didn't see the first time, and I hate to
I understand that you didn't see it the first time.
Yeah.
What I don't understand is that you don't see it now, with me bringing it up.
The thing is, I do see it now. I didn't like the ending.
That's fine.
I need more. I need more.
You cannot like the ending, but understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do. I
Thank you. Okay.
I've understood the entire time.
All right.
We've just been kicking this dead dog the whole time.
No, this dead Pam.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
There you go.
this
That's better.
Pam.
Yeah, okay. That's fine.
And I just did not like the ending because I needed more.
Yeah.
That's all it was.
More is always better. Like with most of the creepypastas, we come up with random, either silly ways with the
Or
Supernatural
better
Task
ways,
Force,
like,
or actually better ways to say that the monster's still out there, or give some closure.
Yeah.
And this is one that
I
gets it.
just didn't feel any closure. I think that's what it really came down to. Like, there was no closure to that ending. It was just like, if you like stretch a little bit, you get that. But okay.
Yeah.
Were you gonna say something, Mikey?
Yeah.
Well, considering we don't know the era, the spot where the dandelions could be could just be where the outhouse used to be.
Yeah, because good manure.
That's true. Yeah.
Though I'm going to assume that it's sometime in the here and now, or like maybe a couple of years, within the last decade or so.
I mean,
Is when the story was when narratorman went to the place and got the story in the first place and some of that, and then so it's 30 years from that is when Pam's and all that happened. So,
and I'll say this: Vietnam vet.
yeah, exactly. We do get he's an elderly man and he's a Vietnam vet. So there go, early 2000s, like mid 2000s ish.
Here's the other thing, though. Yes, Buck is telling us the story. Yes, he was in Vietnam, but he could have heard the story from an elderly guy when he was young.
30 years
Oh,
fuck. Okay, well, the story needs to add that.
There's so many possibilities because a lot of things aren't defined.
Yeah, again, it suffers from short pasta syndrome, where there's not enough detail, and so we are just constantly lashing out at the gaps.
Yeah.
We're trying to jump over gaps constantly in the story.
But long story short,
Do you recommend?
not really.
Yeah.
It needs more closure. Buck needs to have a reason to be Buck. The triple narrator situation's weird. Feels weird. There aren't actually triple narrators, but it feels like there are.
Yeah.
Because when Buck says things that he shouldn't know, it doesn't really feel like Buck. It feels like an omniscient.
Yeah, and the fact that he doesn't have the quotes on his section makes it even more confusing, because suddenly is this actually Buck Silver telling the story, or is it a omniscient narrator?
Yeah, that would clarify it all. Yeah. But overall, not really recommended.
Okay. So that was this week's episode. If you like what you heard, if you didn't, leave us a comment in the comment section below, whether it's posted, whether it be on Cuba6, Facebook, YouTube, or Tumblr. You can leave us emails at aldenterigamortis@gmail.com. You can also talk to us on Twitter. Mikey is at the E stands for evil. Gamer in Yellow is at the Gamer in Yellow, but without the W, because Twitter hates him and won't give him that last. They took
my character.
They took his character.
Yeah. Stole it. It's mine.
And you can also contact me at Review Cultist, one word. Obviously, because it's Twitter. Anyway.
You can put underscores.
Yeah.
Probably.
If you'd like to help support the show, you can go to Patreon, look up Dente, Rigamortis, and select the backer tier you'd like to support us at. We have $2 and $5 tiers with early access and special episodes from my hosts and myself. Just go check it out, see what you want, see how you want to support us, which tier you want to support us at. Every little bit helps. To our patrons already helping support the show, thank you immensely. You're helping keep those hosting bills at bay, and we very much appreciate that. And to the listeners and authors of these stories, thank you, because without either of you, any of you, we wouldn't have a show. So thank you.
Our two listeners. Without either of them.
Yes.
Oh, because you said either.
Not either you.
I see how you came to that conclusion. Yeah, it's fine.
Yes, thank you.
But that would also be true if that was the case, too.
Ouch.
What?
So until next time, I have been your host, Review Cultist.
I'm Mikey, the E stands for evil.
And I'm the gamer in yellow.
And this has been Al Dente Rigamortis. Sleep well.